Data from satellite imagery showed that the sites where the three buildings collapsed continued to be extremely hot in the days after 9/11. Weeks after the attack, recovery workers continued to discover molten metal at ground zero, a fact confirmed by New York Mayor Rudolph Giuliani.
There were fires of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit below the ground.
First of all, let's go back to your basic premise that there was a pool of molten steel. I know of absolutely nobody, and no eyewitness who said so, nobody who's produced it.
You'd get down below and you'd see molten steel running down the channel rails, like you're in a foundry.
Neither FEMA, nor NIST, nor the 9/11 Commission have any explanation for this. Why didn't the BBC point this out?
So, I mean, these things are burning. At one point, I think they were about 2,800 degrees.
Many people reported explosions. Janitor William Rodriguez was in the basement of the North Tower and, along with a number of others, witnessed explosions before and after the attack on the building.
This is the secondary explosion. We've got numerous people covered with dust from the secondary explosion.
If they had detonated, planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
As soon as I got outside, I heard a second explosion and another.
It sounded like gunfire. You know, bang, 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 and then all of a sudden, three big explosions.
Because if there was a third explosion, this building might not last.
Big explosion.
Do you know if it was an explosion or if it was a building collapse? To me, it sounded like an explosion.
That is another bomb going off. He tried to get his men out as quickly as he could, but he said that there was another explosion which took place.
Why did the producers choose to exclude the testimony of eyewitnesses?
My colleague Stephen Evans, who was in the Trade Centre and was interviewed just after the first explosion.
There was another big explosion in the other tower. Flames coming out in this billowing grey smoke. People still not panicking. People not quite understanding what was going on. Then somebody said that they saw an airliner go into one of those towers. Then, I don't know, an hour later than that, we had that big explosion from much lower. I don't know what on earth caused that. The thing that strikes me is, one, the terribleness of the incident, whatever the cause, and we don't go into the politics, but whatever the cause, the terribleness, the hugeness of what's happened. So huge, in fact, that most of the people around simply can't understand what happened. People were just standing around, talking to each other, nodding their heads.
Official bodies have suggested that Building 7 was weakened to the point of collapse by falling debris and subsequent fires, although this has not been confirmed. The conspiracy files acknowledged that officials have said that the original explanation of fire weakening the structure
had a low probability and more research was needed.
Yet before the viewer was informed of this, the programme presented evidence that supported the official theory of fire being the cause of collapse.
The building became a raging inferno, partly fueled by large diesel storage tanks for emergency generators. The sprinkler system didn't work because, as firemen on the day reported, the mains water supply to the building was knocked out when the Twin Towers came down.
We got all kinds of water problems. The two trade buildings took out the mains. There's no way to put the fire out.
The 9/11 Truth Movement has never disputed that Building 7 was on fire and sustained some structural damage from falling debris. Yet they have pointed to the fact that steel skyscrapers have been ravaged by fire for days without collapsing, and that even critically weakened buildings do not collapse symmetrically into their own footprint, in 6.5 seconds in this case, freefall rate. The BBC failed to mention these facts. After presenting examples of other controlled demolitions, the producer again reverted to Coburn's opinions.
These are other buildings which were brought down by demolition charges. The collapse of Building 7 here looks similar.
We're standing here north of Ground Zero in the original footprint of World Trade Center 7, which is this dark building.
As the conspiracy files did not provide fair and balanced coverage, we have included a professor of physics who has published peer-reviewed papers on the collapse of Building 7 as a counter-argument to Coburn.
You can actually see what happens. This is looking directly south at where we're standing now. We're down here.
But it does look exactly like a controlled demolition.
I understand why people might think that, and I see what they're saying.
Something that needs to be explored very carefully, but the characteristics are there. So you look at the building, you see it dip in the middle first, and the sides bow in a little bit, and then you see it come down.
But when you learn the facts about the way that the building was built and about the way that it supported itself.
The trusses in the building made it very asymmetrical. There were 24 central columns, steel columns.
And the damage that was done from the collapsing towers that preceded it.
For those to fail in such a way that that building would collapse in the center first and then come straight down, instead of toppling over, for instance? No.
The idea that it was a demolition just holds no water.
And you can see what I mean. It really does look like an explosive demolition.
What Coburn and the BBC state to the viewer is that even if all the hallmarks of controlled demolition are clearly visible,
it does look exactly like a controlled demolition.
I understand why people might think that.
It just isn't controlled demolition because we say so. No evidence was provided to support Coburn's supposed facts. Here's the opinion of a controlled demolition expert.
Vind je niet dan?
Ja, je ziet het, de onderste verdiepingen gaan eerst.
Ja, en de rest zakt er gewoon in. Dus dit is controlled demolition.
Zeker weten?
Zeker weten. Er is nagesprongen. Dit is in opdracht gebeurd. Dit heeft een team gedaan van experts.
Maar dit is ook op 11 september gebeurd.
Dezelfde dag?
Dezelfde dag.
Dezelfde dag? Weet je dat zeker?
Ja.
Was het zeker weten de 11e? Totaal geen waar zijn.
7 uur nadat de World Trade Center naar beneden.
NIST has even been investigating the possibility of controlled demolition, but there was no mention of this. A year after 9/11, World Trade Center leaseholder Larry Silverstein said this during an interview with PBS.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
A spokesperson for Silverstein later denied that he was referring to controlled demolition, saying that he was talking about the firefighters left in the building being evacuated. But the fact remains that pull is an industry term for a controlled demolition. It is clear that many people were privy to prior knowledge with regard to the collapse of WTC-7.
Keep your eye on that building. It'll be coming down. The building is about to blow up. Move it back. All right, guys?
We are walking back. There's a building about to blow up.
Why didn't the BBC interview rescue workers who were told Building 7 was going to be brought down, or firefighters who witnessed explosions?
I think I know an explosion when I hear it, you know. I was real close to Building 7 when it fell down, and running away from that, that's one of the things that I live with all the time. And I don't know, but that didn't sound like just a building falling down to me while I was running away from it. There's a lot of eyewitness testimony down there hearing explosions. I didn't see any reason for that building to fall down the way it did, and a lot of guys should be saying the same thing.
And why didn't the program investigate how its own organisation was reporting the collapse of WTC-7 over 20 minutes before it actually came down?
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. As you can see behind me, the Trade Center...
Still to this day, it has not been officially confirmed how the building came down. Yet the BBC and other news corporations were reporting on the causes of the collapse before it actually happened.
This was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks.
Head of news at BBC World, Richard Porter, stated that the original tapes had gone missing, but blamed this on cock-up, not conspiracy.
Were completely flabbergasted by it and just couldn't comprehend it. I mean, it almost sounded too far-fetched. I was wondering what it's felt like for you being in Manhattan. Well, unfortunately, I think we've lost the line with Jane Stanley in Manhattan. Perhaps we can rejoin her and follow that up later.
Why didn't the BBC attempt to examine why the 9/11 Commission failed to even mention the collapse of WTC-7?
Why is there not a word about the collapse of that building in the 9/11 Commission report?
We didn't see any evidence of the kind of thing you're talking about. We thought that was part of the tragedy of 9/11. The building collapsed later on. There was not a loss of life in that building. And it was not part of our report.
Not part of the report.
The commission reviewed the question of the Building 7 collapse. I don't know specifically if it's in the report. I can't recall that it is.
Right, I don't think it's in the report.
Okay, then I'll accept your word for that.
There was a decision not to put it in the report.
I do not recall that there was a specific discussion in the commission and we rejected the idea of putting Building 7 in. I don't recall that. So I presume the report was written without reference to Building 7 at all, because all of the attention, of course, was on the trade tower.
Not long into the flight, the hijackers overpowered the crew and turned the plane back towards the Capitol. Minutes later, a huge explosion rocked the Pentagon, killing all 64 people in the aircraft along with 125 military and civilians on the ground.
Throughout the Conspiracy Files program, there was no attempt to understand how hijackers with limited training could have navigated the complex airliners hundreds of miles with such precision. The 9/11 Commission did not explain how Flight 77 could have performed a virtually impossible aerial manoeuvre, and the BBC failed to assess this discrepancy. Dozens of commercial and military pilots have gone on record disputing the official account. Air traffic controllers have commented on how Flight 77 appeared to manoeuvre more like a military plane, Why didn't the BBC interview any of these pilots or air traffic controllers?
A Boeing 757 is 150.
After presenting the official story, the Conspiracy Files then switched to a clip from Loose Change, the popular internet documentary about 9/11.
Are we supposed to believe that it disappeared?
The programme only looked at one aspect of the argument put forward in Loose Change.
Why is there no damage from where the wings, or the vertical stabilizer, or the engines would have slammed in?